Hey everyone, this is Heather K. Margolis with Channel Maven and Spark Your Channel. Thanks so much for tuning into the Channel Maven podcast. This episode, I'm super excited to be talking to Trinda Searle, VP of People and Culture at 360 Insights. Trinda, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, you and I were on the Women's Leadership Council a few months ago at this point. I feel like in COVID time, things either go really quickly or really slowly. And we were talking about how HR, like that term HR, that those of us who have been in the workforce for 20 years know and remember, has really shifted to people and culture. And it struck me that 360 Insights is known for its culture. So tell us a little bit about 360 Insights. Tell us a little bit about your culture and how it was built. And I love that your dog is barking in the background. Mine is about to do the same.
Appreciate that. Sure. So starting with 360 Insights. So we are a software platform that works in the channel space to help facilitate a variety of incentives, rebates, recognition, and points programs. We also provide valuable insights to the brands that we support about how what they're offering and how it's working within the market, so they can make decisions around different programs they want to run, and we can consult and help enable good decisions on their part. So the culture of 360 Insights, I've been with the organization about 2 years. So I'll preface it with, there's been a lot of work done over a lot of years to build it. Our CEO, Jason Atkins, is a very values-driven leader. And so I'll start there. When I think about culture is sort of the result. It's what you get by how you behave and how you act. So 360 Insights is a values-driven organization, meaning that we have core values that, we revisit over time for the purposes of how we amplify and communicate them. So we added a value 2 years ago so that we were catching everything that we wanted to be intentional about. But when I think about culture being the result of your actions, we just anchor everything to our values. So they're not words on walls. They're not meant for external purposes. They're really meant for our people. We make decisions based on them. We sort of sense check what we do based on them. So if we always anchor ourselves to them and we make decisions based on our values, then the output will continue to support the culture we want, regardless of where we go in geographies, regardless of how many people we welcome, how much we scale as a business. The culture is going to evolve and feel different. But if it's tied to your values, then it feels somewhat the same, and it preserves what you need as you go through change. So a ton of work's been done over the years to continue to anchor 360 back to their values, which has allowed the culture to grow as the business has grown.
And I love that. And you mentioned it's not just something we write on a wall, but then don't really pay attention to. But you have it on your website. Like any one of your customers, anyone who is thinking about joining your team can see those values, and either it aligns with their own and it gets them excited, or it doesn't, and they know that they're not a great fit. I always think of the late Tony Hsieh of Zappos used to say, if you're not like someone who likes to party and drink and have fun with your coworkers, Zappos might not be for you. And I just always thought of that as, first of all, I would never go work at Zappos. My husband likes to say that I'm a cheap date. I one drink and Heather is going to bed. But I also felt like it's so, I appreciate that so much, that he's so clear in their value statement. So you've acquired a bunch of companies recently. Talk to us a little bit about how you keep that culture as you acquire these companies. And also, we're in a pandemic. Like we're maybe coming out of it. People are starting to show their smiles again in public. But talk a little bit about how you keep that culture and how important that's been.
Well, I mean, this is why all that pre-work and it not just being something you do to solve a problem when you're trying to establish your values, but you do a lot of work over a lot of time and you constantly evolve them. Our culture wasn't reliant upon, surface level things. So it didn't rely on, activities and food and beverage and, those window dressings that some people will attribute to that's our culture. That's kind of part of it. It's part of our be real and have fun values, but really, the culture is that sort of foundational stuff, so things that you can't see and feel and touch. So again, when we went remote, one would think that, we can't be together. So how do we preserve the culture? The culture wasn't dependent upon physical things. Yes, part of, we were a people first organization. We were very much centered around being together and having activities, but the really most essential part of our culture were the values. So now we just reapply that to how do we work remotely? How do we connect remotely? How do we keep our people supported remotely, all through that same values-based lens? Because the same principles apply, be real and have fun, live in the possible. These are our values, and you can continue to live those values while working in a different style of environment. And then again, when we come back to the office, for those that choose to, we again continue to live those values just in a different way. But that's how you preserve the culture.
Right. Well, and I think in some ways it was good that we were all feeling the same thing. It's not like this was something that was just happening in the US and Canada, and then your EMEA team is off. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. It happened globally. It happened to everyone. So I think that's helpful too.
That's a really interesting point, though. Sorry to interrupt you, but we thought we were dealing with massive change because everyone went remote. But then we did realize that there's no need to feel a feeling of FOMO. We're all in the same boat. We're not stuck at home while there's a party happening at the office. We're all in the same boat. And then we start to think about coming back and that kind of change. But there's a new coming back for a lot of organizations that we have to think about, because we're going to have employees that will choose not to come back to the office, either because they've decided to move away from where our offices are located. They're not comfortable. They just prefer to be from home. And so now we have this new, how do we again, keep our culture, knowing that we're going to have people in the office engaging and having activities together while some people are home and some people doing a mix of both. So that's that's going to be a whole new way we work as well. So we're sort of imagining how do we again, preserve that culture in that new environment, which will be hybrid.
Right. Well, and I think one of the benefits to all of this happening, I remember sometimes being the one person who was remote when other people were in the midst of a conference room. And I would pipe up and say something, and whether you're in the room or you're the person on the phone, there's this sense of like, oh, that's right, there's somebody on the phone. Like, somebody started talking on the phone. That's right, I forgot it was on. I think that's going to go away. I think it's going to be easier to do a hybrid because we're going to be more sensitive to the fact, first of all, the people who are remote will be on a screen somewhere, not just like this box in the middle of the table that all of a sudden starts talking. But I think we are all now more sensitive to the need to include everyone and make sure that everyone's voices are being heard in the midst of those conversations.
Yeah, it's funny. Amidst all the tragedy of COVID and all the struggles that we've had some amazing learnings, right? We've developed a better, as you said, appreciation for working remotely, and nobody goes to the whiteboard when someone's on a call. We've gotten really good at, putting our video on, or in some cases, reminding them the video doesn't always have to be on, go for a walk, take a call, and get some physical activity. But just, imagining how we can enrich people's lives by allowing them to work remote. Our organization will allow employees to continue to work remote if their lifestyle is better because of it. We used to be concerned about being interrupted during a meeting. If we were given the privilege of working from home or we were a remote employee, we really guarded our environment around us. And now it's just, normal that someone's bouncing a toddler on their knee during a call. Earlier in this call, my dog was barking, and that will probably happen 5 more times while we speak. And nobody cares anymore. I'm going to hazard a guess that you might be in yoga pants right now.
I might be in yoga pants. And it's one of those things that I know the positive, if we can put a positive spin on this horrible thing that's happened to all of us, is that we have given ourselves a break. Like, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. I'm in yoga pants because I have a block I can see on my calendar where I'm going to go down and do yoga or Pilates, and then I'm going to come back up. And that, for me, as a lifestyle change, is so. I do have young kids and a very needy dog who I'm shocked has not started barking yet. And I think for us personally that we can give ourselves a break and not feel like we have to be on all the time, and that people will be understanding. I have been working better in the past 16 months than I think I did before, because I didn't have to get in the car and drive somewhere and realize that I forgot that one notebook that had all those notes in it at my house. Like, it just, I think if we can look forward, which we will talk about in a moment, but I think it is one of the great things from a cultural standpoint that that we can look back and put a positive spin on. Tell me a little bit about how, as acquisitions happen, how you can assimilate all of these cultures without losing either your internal team's drive or the acquiring company's drive. Like, how do you keep everyone motivated when there is all this change in the midst of this global change?
Yeah. Well, our approach, at least from a people standpoint, is to not make a lot of assumptions pre-close. So you need to go through your due diligence and make sure you're checking out the company in terms of, any surprises, financial modeling. But, looking at a list of names and titles and salaries and departments really isn't a storybook of who these people are. So when we look at the people element of it, we approach it as, here's what we know. And then when the deal closes, we start to we take our time, sort of a get to know you phase, right? Sometimes you have the privilege of being able to speak to individuals that can articulate more about their culture, like what's really important to preserve, what we need to know about. Other times it happens faster and you don't have an opportunity to speak with the people who could best articulate that. So you need to learn that. And then you need to be very open to, it's not just to paint the brush of welcome to 360, now do everything the way we do it. Because whether it's a 10-person company, a 50-person company, or a 500-person company you're acquiring, you're buying them for a reason. They're going to have things that you can learn from that you don't want to erase and just say it must be the 360 way. So you basically, you want to take your time to get to know them. Don't build assumptions about people, especially based on title. Get to know them, spend time with them. Make sure that you're leveraging people internally within those organizations, because they're your best source of information, as opposed to, again, making all the determinations as the buyer, and taking the best of everything and putting it together.
I love that you guys are really saying everyone's experience means something. And we want to hear from everyone. So that's really great.
When you go through acquisitions too, like, you need to be really transparent about what you're buying and why you're buying it. So, you can't guarantee that everything will be identical to how it was before, because if 360 does it one way and the acquired company does it another, we don't want to automatically say it's the 360 way. But at the same time, we don't want two ways of doing things. So one may be better than the other. And sometimes it's going to be the acquired company. Sometimes it's going to be 360. Or we decide there's a better way combining both. But, being transparent about this is changing, standing in front of the things that change that, people won't find are change for the better, and then amplifying and making sure there's a balance, a balanced lens put against, well, this is changing and this might've felt better, but this is what's being added. This is what's being given. This is the benefit to the acquisition for you. So again, not sort of hiding behind all that, leading with it and saying, here's what's changing, here's why it's changing, bringing them along for the story. People are really good about change when they get given the information and they can understand why decisions are made, which is, again, part of our values.
Well, and I think too, as you, it's so interesting that you've acquired these companies in the midst of the pandemic, where normally you're meeting everyone before, or you're like flying to the headquarters and meeting everyone. So that hasn't happened. Do you feel like this is the new way of doing acquisitions, or do you feel like once things clear up, you'll go back to actually meeting the team?
Oh, I would think that once things clear up, we would go back. I mean, it's much more comfortable transaction when you get to meet people. It fast forwards relationships in ways that, that social aspect, right? We, with the people that we've acquired, we've had lots of opportunity to meet over Zoom, and, the people that are part of my team or part of my leadership team, lots of time spent together, but could never replace going out for a social drink or
Right.
whatever it is that someone wants to do, where you talk about more personal stuff. But you can still get to a bit more of a personal level, even over virtual. What I would say it has enabled, though, and what it's opened our eyes to is, in some ways, it's enabled faster work to get done, because we're not spending our time on planes and sleeping in hotels. We're focusing on getting the actual integration work done. Very little work gets done for me when I am boarding a plane, taxiing into an office, sitting in a meeting, and then going back to the airport or the hotel. Having a 1 hour Zoom and then going off to actually put some things into action, things can happen a little bit quicker. So I would say that we definitely will take the opportunity to meet in person, but will we need to be there every week over a course of 6 months? No,
probably not. Right. Well, and it's funny, we talk about productivity, and I know parents had a really hard year, and I am a parent of young kids. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old. We are fortunate enough that we have a nanny. So she's only part-time. So we were only sort of doing the juggle 10 hours a week. But how do you think things change for parents as we open back up? I mean, I know for me, my girls finally went back to preschool, and that was so amazing for us and our family. First of all, because they were sick of each other and needed other sources of socialization. But also just having that sort of open up. So parenting to all ages looks really different than it did 2 years ago. Where do you think that's going?
Like anything that I look at when I think about people in this pandemic, is it's different for everyone. We have parents who are happy to finally have more time with their children and are really enjoying having a little bit more involvement in the schooling to support the virtual. Others, and again, it's not a criticism over one or the other, just people have different demands, different number of people in their household at any given time, different requirements of their job. It's a lot easier for someone who doesn't have time sensitive work to do to be able to break and help their children, whether you have small children or you have teenagers, because I have a grade 10 math student, and it's not making, not helping my ego right now.
How's your grade 10 math?
When I try to help him with his math. But I have a job where, for the most part, I do have some control over my schedule, so I can break and really spend the time it's going to take me to help with grade 10 math. Whereas other individuals, they have more time sensitive. They're not able to take breaks as easily. And that becomes really stressful, especially when it's not a matter of helping with schooling, because maybe you can do that in the evening, but your child actually needs something from you in that moment. So it depends on so that's what we've been saying throughout this whole thing, is there's no one policy we can give all employees that says this is how you can handle flexible hours or anything like that. It's very specific to the individual. So the really powerful approach is making sure your leadership is speaking to their employees, understanding what the individual roadblocks and challenges are, and then appealing to your entire workforce, your entire team, to not expect the same standard to just be a blanket across all. Don't measure yourself by how your peer is operating. You do your best, you tell us what you need, because everybody's situation is different. So for some people, going back to work people will be very happy about that, being able to go back to the office, or being able to work from home without the children home with you.
Right.
Right. So life looks a lot different, as you said, when working from home was a privilege at one point in time, because you had this beautiful quiet space. When you're a parent, it's so rare to be in the home alone. I used to love those days. Now there's a lot of people in my house right now, and I would like to leave. But and then again, parents aren't the only people that we need to be worried about. To talk about generational, regardless of generation, this virtual life wasn't hitting the mark for a lot of people who don't really like working with technology in every single meeting and every single impasse. They do better when they can whiteboard and kind of sit down in a meeting space together. So they're having a hard time adapting to everything needing to be virtual. And then the people who are home alone, or people who are living in very small spaces, for those that don't have the privilege of family, because while it has presented challenges, it's also something that's a privilege.
At least you had another human. Yeah, it's hard.
Exactly.
I remember one of our team members lives alone, and in the pandemic, she was like, I just haven't physically touched another human in like a month at that point. And I was saying, I'm going to drive over. I'm going to let my dog run over to you. You can give her a hug and then she'll come back. But I think luckily we're past that. Luckily we know more now where masking and being outdoors seems safer and vaccinations are rolling. But I think,
Canada, as an example, Ontario,
right.
just tomorrow is coming out of lockdown. So we've been unable to gather, to see people outside of our own households, heavy restrictions indoor and outdoor. So the United States has been doing better for some time, but remembering there's other areas in the world that have still been in severe lockdowns. And for individuals who do live alone or who are struggling in general, they've been in it a long time. So it's, it's again, different for each person.
Of course, we definitely, and I was in my own personal lockdown because I still, even as things opened up in the US, I still didn't feel comfortable and still don't totally because my girls can't get vaccinated. But yes, I mean, if you are in a lockdown and living alone, there's a lot that, especially people younger in their career. I know you and I have talked about that meeting around the water cooler or going to lunch with your peers does so much for your own personal growth that people miss that for the last year and a half.
Yeah, for people that are new to the workforce, and that's perfect in terms of generational difference. There's a lot that you learn by observation and watching somebody else, do something that you've never attempted before. And that, you still see some of that when you're working virtually, but not, you tend to see the people that you work with most frequently. And as much as employers are enabling social events and meetups and things like that, you're not seeing professional things happen, which when you're new and you don't yet know all the etiquettes of navigating the professional space, it's a bit of a disadvantage. But again, if everyone stays aware of that and everybody helps those individuals, it doesn't have to remain a disadvantage. We just different way of mentoring, a different way of helping people who are new to the workforce still be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk, what does it look like when we go back as we round out the end of this podcast here? We talked a little bit about hybrid and what that looks like, but how do we regain our culture, especially to your point, as different geographies are coming back slowly?
So as I mentioned before, it's going to be another new work environment. We're not, when we go back, at least in the 360 environment, we're not all going back. A percentage of people want to stay home. A percentage of people want to be remote. So, I do think that every employer is going to have to go through sort of what I'll call a recommit with their workforce, right? What we look like and feel like is now different than what it was pre-pandemic, right? It just things had to change a little bit. So you kind of got to recommit and understand both, recommit what we as an employer can offer. We feel we did a really good job during the pandemic to support people. We weren't perfect, and we definitely had people who needed more support than others, and we needed to hear that before we saw it. But I think we did a pretty good job with our people. Our engagement scores were very high. So we did the right things then. But now another eve of change is coming, and people are coming back to work, and some are a little bit nervous about the safety. Some are a little bit, uncomfortable with, now leaving their children after being with their children. So you kind of got to recommit to what the team and employees want, what you're offering as an employer, and make sure those are aligned again. Because when we hired people 2, 3, 4 years ago, we presented a job to them, a role to them, and a culture to them that they signed up for. And now all of that looks a little bit different. Again, if your values are strong and you remain anchored to those, then it will be different, but it should still feel like the right fit. You just got to make sure that you are articulating it and aligning what you're offering to what the employee is still looking for. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of articles you can read out there, and I'm certainly pouring myself into them about, again, when we hired somebody, we offered them this, and now it looks differently. When we hired somebody, they said they wanted this, and they want something different now.
Right.
So people have rethought what's important to them. what they're willing to invest relative to their time at work or what they want to be doing. The pandemic really made people think. So we have something slightly different to offer now as a company, and our employees may now have something slightly different to offer us. And so we need to recommit and make sure those things are still aligned, and making changes where needed to make sure they remain aligned.
Well, and one thing I hope never changes are the healthy changes we've made. So we as a company now realize how important mental health is. And if you need to go take a hike at 3 p.m, or you need to do a yoga class at noon, or, we already had the Peloton bike. We ended up getting the Peloton tread, and I love all the Peloton apps. I know a lot of people did in-home things. Keep doing that. Like that for our mental health is super important. And also as an employer, it's important to me that my team over the past year and a half has come to me and said, I need a mental health break. Like I need 3 days where I don't think about anything but my own well-being. And I think a lot of companies are seeing that. And I love that. And I love that people are speaking up and doing something about it.
Well, the work around mental health was already beginning before the pandemic, and thank goodness it was becoming more normal to talk about it. But it went in flash forward, in my opinion, within the pandemic time, because it was becoming more normal for those people who were suffering and maybe suffering in silence to feel comfortable talking about it, but it might have still been a minority group of people. Whereas during the pandemic, it's like, there's a range of what we classify as mental health concerns, right? There's things that are being clinically treated, people who have severe things to be coping with. And then there's the minor stuff. There's just the feeling of isolation. There's the minor feelings of sadness. And I would say that the really extreme things were what were being focused on before. And now people are saying, yeah, but if we start focusing on the minor things, not just also, and we talk about it when it's a small problem and we make it comfortable, then, we're taking care of our whole selves. But it became more normal to talk about just the general, today I feel isolated, today I feel sad. Today I'm struggling. And so I think that, it definitely became more broad, more comfortable for everyone to be discussing.
Right. Well, and I look at it as situational too. Like just because today you're dealing with depression or isolation doesn't mean that that's going to categorize you. Like it's something that I talked on Women's Leadership Council in November of last year about death by 1,000 cuts, I was calling it. Like we as a family had a lot of little things happen that added up to me just feeling less than. And I needed to be able to talk about that and know that it was okay to like take a day and just be by myself. And I remember my husband walked in, we had childcare. It was like January 2nd. And he walked in and I was watching Schitt's Creek, which is that is my go-to show. If I need to just laugh at something ridiculous, Schitt's Creek. He was like, what's going on? I was like, I'm going to sit in bed all day and watch Schitt's Creek. And then tomorrow I'll be fine. He was like, great, you do that.
Well, that's just it. You're totally right. People were nervous about putting their hand up because it was a today thing. Right. And so they didn't want to be categorized. Not that if you have something that's officially diagnosed, that shouldn't be talked about too, but just people feel comfortable expressing what they're experiencing in the moment. And, I try to remind leaders that I coach that you're not psychologists and counselors, but you can create a safe space for someone to let you know where they're at. You don't want to define what someone's feelings are, but you want them to know that you're listening, you're willing to, how can I help you? What can I do? What do you need from me? As opposed to just having to, video on and just smile and your manager says, but it also requires employees, we think they're comfortable, but we do need employees to speak up and let their managers know. And then we need to train our leaders so that when that does occur, they know how to be empathetic. They know they're not counselors. They're there to solve the actual problem unless it's of course work related. Their job is to be empathetic and what can I do to help? How can I do anything with your work life that will help enable you solving what you're dealing with. Is it a break? Is it a walk? Is it a full day off? Is it pointing them towards resources that we have available through our benefits
Right.
that they can use to help remedy what they're going through? So it's just, training both employees and leaders, talk about it and where to go for the right help.
And I love that. And I think you personally are certainly doing that well. I think it's something that, our audience, whether you are a vendor working with partner companies, but you have a lot of employees, or you're a partner company and you have your own employees, all of these learnings from Trinda are things that you could certainly implement. So Trinda, where can people find you if they want to connect?
Best place to reach me would be on LinkedIn. That's where I'm
Great.
on the most.
Trinda Searle, and it's Searle.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time.
Thanks, Heather.